Hello, my name is Francis Fox. And if I look like somebody just dragged me behind their car, it's because I had a lot of interesting things happen last night. This video chat that will be turned into a podcast on Spotify and Apple. Um, Today, I'm going to talk about doing business with aliens. When they talk about ontological shock, which means when you get some information that completely shakes up your entire worldview, it changes everything. I do believe that what people are saying about now disclosure with aliens, I do believe that's going to happen. But I'm going to talk only about business because last night I was conducting business with aliens. And I'm laughing because it is so different from what we know as business today, limited to the physical dimension, etc., that it is, I have to laugh but I have to be very grounded, very important, because it is a shock. For me, it is a pleasant shock because a lot of the manipulations that we have to go through when we do business on the physical dimension just don't happen in the other dimensions with aliens. We are very spiritually unsophisticated. When we think of gods, we think of praying to them and think of asking them to be nice to us, to help us out. When you're going to do business with aliens, that just is not the way it goes. So I'm going to give you a little bit, some descriptions. Now, you know already, if you have followed me, that when I was young, I was used in negotiations with aliens having to do with some off planet beings wanting planet Earth, the people in charge, governments, groups, to make some adjustments having to do with technology, to tone it down because these aliens, obviously good aliens, felt that Earth people, could blow up the planet, and that could possibly create a situation where the planet would go out of its orbit and would affect other planets. So it wasn't a question of we want to control what you're doing on planet Earth. It was a question of what you're doing on planet Earth could affect us. So how about if we come to an agreement? It did not end well. Planet Earth very arrogant due to lack of information, which is why I'm going to be spending a lot of my time having to do with this part of what it is that I know, which is I call the interface part, which is where we're phasing in or we're interfacing with galactic beings. We're in the middle of disclosure right now. Supposedly, there's a lot of earthquakes in Area 51, and they're thinking it's man made. And I'm thinking it is the sheer terror of the people that have been running Area 51, their horror, their anger, because things are going to get exposed and nobody really expected any of that. But let's get into the business part, the funny part. So we're not spiritually sophisticated, having to do with even saying hello to the aliens. We don't know interspecies communication, which is basically how you communicate with your pets if you adore your pets. But of course, you don't value that because you think you're just making it up in your head. Well, get over it. That's interspecies communication. When you know what your pet wants, your pet knows what you want, and you actually act on it. That means you had faith in yourself, that you're not making up that information which is in your head or kind of flowing around your head. Um, Doing business with aliens. That's the title of this chat. Okay, the law of attraction is very important. And you're going to be attracting to you the aliens, the beings, the galactic beings that are kind of your same vibration. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that whatever it is that happened with me last night, I was dealing with aliens at my vibration, which is really good news because I've spent almost 40 years full time doing therapy to recuperate what the government did to me in the military mind control program, which was horrible. But look where I'm at. look what I can do and look what I can do for you, which is the whole point. Before I incarnated, I chose that because that would be the place where I would get the maximum information, learn the most if I could survive the process, which I did. Okay, so let me continue. Um, there's a big issue of compensation. Let's say that I'm dealing with aliens last night who look a lot like some of the graphics and whatever we see when people talk about aliens. And let's say a deal is made. Okay. How do they pay you? How do they pay you? Because if you're going to have a deal with somebody, there's a contract. They don't do contracts. You're going to have your lawyer read it, or you're going to have an advisor there with you while you're negotiating. No, that doesn't happen. How do you reach an agreement, a price? You don't. They already know what it should be. How do they even know that they want something that you have? Well, basically, they are like what Carl Jung said, they know everything. Okay. And suppose you don't want to do business with them. You don't have to do business with them. If you have a good vibration, the ones that are going to come to you are the ones that are going to respect your free will, which apparently is also important off planet, not just on this planet. Okay. So, how do you talk to them? Mentally, interspecies communication, telepathy. Remember the Russian study? Two women, two different cities, both speaking different languages. The experiment, they sent messages to each other. They heard the message in their language that they understood, not the language that the message was sent in. That's the way it's done. Okay. So who decides what? Well, I can tell you from my experience last night, basically they know everything that's going on. They know what they want. They know what you have or that you can represent for someone else, something that they want. They know what it is worth. They know who should get what. In other words, the whole thing about, okay, well, who really owns that if we want to buy it is taken care of because they already have that information and they wouldn't be negotiating if they didn't know that you were either the intermediary, which is my case, or you were the person that actually owned this, whatever it is that they want. They already have that information. Well, okay, so the contract, how does that go? There is no contract. Well, but that doesn't make any sense. You're right. It doesn't make any sense to you because your lens is very narrow. But when you're dealing with beings, which you can be like that also, once you stop limiting yourself, if you can be like them, where you know everything, then a contract doesn't make a lot of sense. First place, it's very physical. And it is assuming that the person you're doing the contract with is going to actually pay attention to the contract and do what it says. Well, the beings that I was dealing with can do whatever the hell they want to do. They're so much more than all of us. So to think that, let's say that I said, I have to have a written contract to submit this to my client because the discussion was something that's not mine. The same thing I did for the government, intermediary. That is actually, the contract is not going to happen. Okay, well then how do you know? You either know or you don't know. You get it or you don't get it. Get to the back of the line, get to the back of the bus, and pay attention to what everybody's trying to tell you, that the world is going to be totally different. It's not what it was, and it's not going to be easy for people because the shift is just too big. You don't even believe what your church teaches you. Okay, so there is no contract. No. Well, how do I know that they're going to do what they say they're going to do? That's an issue. But it's only an issue for you if your vibration is not high enough to where you would be honest. They're going to come to you at your level. The same way I've spent years protecting myself and purifying when bad spirits have attacked me. For some reason, I need a Kleenex now, which means I'm going to say something important. Most of us have understood that when we have really bad nights, even though we think it's because we're genie, thoughts and worries, it's really spirits that have used your mental confusion or obsessiveness to attack. So I've spent years dealing with entity attacks, entity attachments, entity possessions. Entities are spirits. There are some that used to have physical bodies and they work for the devil, and there are some that never had physical bodies. But they can do whatever the heck they want, but they will only be able to stay with you, be with you, choose to be with you, having to do with your vibration. So, okay, so how do you know you can trust them? Are you trustworthy? Well, I don't know if I can trust them. I have a feeling they're not going to show up the way they did to me last night and start a process. You have a belief system. First place, where are your instincts? Why can't you tell whether you can trust them or not? We don't have, there's no networking issue. There's nobody that you're going to be able to, if you're at that level of business or maybe a lower level of business, there's not a network that you can get in contact with at this point, like a network of people. You can't go to the Chamber of Commerce. I think initially you're going to have very few people, which I think has always happened, that will be the people that will be negotiating with aliens, and they will be negotiating at the level of their resonance. At this point, those people are going to be in very high demand, but you're only going to want to work with them if you kind of understand that that can actually happen. And if the business that you have to offer, and it's not a question of going and offering them something, they will know if you have something that they need. It's only going to be at your frequency, which is why frequencies, if like on X, every other article is about frequencies, because that determines everything, particularly from here forward. What is your frequency? Did your father beat you when you were young and you never finished doing therapy on that? You understand that you love him a lot, and you do. But someplace inside your assemblage of bodies, you have a lot of hatred that you felt when you were a child. Well, that pulls down your frequency, your resonance. It's going to be really hard for you, let's say, that you want to deal with aliens. Right now, this is for business. But let's say you're doing business and you have something that maybe the aliens would want. First place, they're going to contact you before you contact them. Okay? But let's say you have something they want and they contact you. Again, the ones that are going to contact you are going to be your resonance, your frequency. Okay, so lawyers, there are no lawyers. What lawyer? You go to your lawyer with let's say they give you a contract that's written on paper. You go to a lawyer. What do you think your lawyer is going to think? What do you think your lawyer is going to think? Well, I suspect he's not going to want to be doing business with you. And he's going to go home at night and say to his wife, listen, that client I had, I don't know what happened to them, but look at this. They actually think I'm going to believe this. So this is the reason why it's going to be very messy. Okay, let's say there's an agreement. And this is the funny part. There's an agreement. And they have told you what they're going to pay, and you know what it is that they are purchasing from you. There's another issue. Where do they pick it up? Where do they pick it up? Can they pick it up? Whatever they bought from you. Where do they put the money? Or whatever the exchange can be. In this case, it was money. Where does that money go? Well, it's got to go in your bank account. I agree with you. What are you going to tell your bank? And what are you going to tell the government? I'll give you an experience I had. I got a very large contract for several $100,000 several years ago, and the person paid me one lump sum, which is as it should be and as it is. But honestly, I wasn't ready for that kind of business. I had a problem with the platform where this regular person, not an ET, paid me. They actually suspended my account and held the money for 3 months because it was like, what is this woman in to that she would get this much money, one deposit? Okay. Then I move it into my bank account and then I have my banker. Uh, the government says that after such and such, you have to. I said, okay, well, I sold my services. Can we see the contract? There was no contract because the person that I was doing business with was kind of like me, very mom and pop. We had a verbal agreement. She knew that I would do what I said I was going to do. And I wasn't going to do it till I was paid. So I was paid and I did what I had to do, but there was no contract. So I had to go to a lawyer and I had to say, I need a contract. What's it going to say? Well, it can be a half a page, 1 page. And we made up some language having to do with my services. And I gave it to the bank. And meanwhile, the bank is looking at me side eyed, like, okay, what do you, okay, that was then. Now we're talking about a lot more than that money. What bank account do you put it in? What do you tell your banker? And what do you tell the government? What do you tell them? Is the government going to be happy with you dealing? Let's say that they believe you, the government, because the bankers never will, because they're too much into physical things that you can actually count. Are they going to be happier the fact that you're negotiating with ETs? Aliens? What about national boundaries? Who gave you the right to negotiate with aliens? Well, who said I couldn't? You see what I'm saying? All of these things are happening already. It happened last night. But now we get to the point of what bank account does it go into? Okay, so put that aside. This is an object, kind of like an object that was negotiated. The negotiations haven't finished, but the basics are there. How do they pick it up? How do we get it to them? Do they put the money first? Do they even do money? Do they put the money in the account first and then they pick it up? How does that happen? I already have that information, which I'm not going to share here. But again, your belief system. Your belief system. It's like, okay, that's good for a movie, Francis. Yes, actually, it is good for a training manual for this stage of life for humans on planet Earth, which I call the interface stage. And very few people are going to be taking the lead or understanding this. I'm just giving it to you because I think that everybody, regardless of their circumstances, should have all the information available to them all of the time, which is contrary to how we have conducted ourselves on planet Earth. The important people have lots of information that you don't have. Well, and the meek shall inherit the earth. You need to have this information also. And I'm sharing it. But it's probably slapping you in the face in terms of your belief systems because you're spiritually unsophisticated. You didn't just have people that withheld this information from you, you never developed your instincts. You have, I'm saying important things because when this happens, I'm getting attacked at this level because I'm going to say something important. You have always had instincts. You have all the psychic abilities that I have. You don't trust them. You haven't been trained in them. Your schooling, your society, your culture, your religion has denied them. And if you accepted them, then you ended up being like an outcast the way I have been socially. I have had people that have had no problem convincing other people that I am absolutely insane. I understand they even wanted to have me hospitalized, but it had to do with belief systems. Also, they were not nice people and they wanted something that I had, something physical, um, or control over me. So it's very easy to convince people that I'm completely crazy. So even if you had wanted to widen, keep your lens wide because you're born with your lens very wide, you would want it to widen it, keep them wide. You wouldn't have had a lot of people to work with other than secret societies, Illuminati's, Masons, and the Freemasons, the Masons, Freemasons. What's the other one? I don't remember the other groups. Or you're into black magic, which might not have been your resonance. So it's not been easy. So I'm not blaming you, and I am slapping you around with information that if you believe it, you'd be like, okay, so where does the money go? It can go in your bank account. But then you have to explain to your people, not the aliens that put that money there. Okay, so how do you reach an agreement for what it is that they should be paying? Well, chances are they're going to be buying something from you that you don't know the real value to. And if you're dealing with people at your resonance, and I'm hoping that you have a high resonance, they're going to tell you what it's worth to them. And I strongly suggest that you not argue with them. Chances are they're going to give you more than you thought that was worth. It's obviously something that you have that they need, they want, and they know the value of. How it is that they can end up being so non physical and yet put money in a bank account, I don't know. That's yet to be seen. But it doesn't really matter because whatever it is that's in the process of being sold or changing hands isn't sold or hasn't changed hands yet. So it's very interesting, very simple. You want to know how long the negotiations took? I have to correct you. There were no negotiations. There was information that was given to me because they already knew what was up in the air. There was an amount said that was above and beyond, I think, what I or anybody else associated with this, which is very limited number of people, would have ever thought. My part in it, which is a percentage, which I always thought that perhaps I should get, they had the number, which was shockingly high. The process is very simple. Money in bank accounts, the person who has whatever it is they want, and then the person who they're negotiating with, which is not a negotiation. And then the question of, how do we get this to you? How do you get this? And they said, that's not an issue. We'll have it within 24 hours. Well, what does that mean? You don't need to know. We will have it within 24 hours. Simple. So you don't have to believe a word that I have just said. All you have to do is not throw away the information and start becoming instinctive. Take a lot of walks in nature, get really close to your pets and tell them that you want to hear them. You'll hear them in your head. You can also just understand what they want. But if you're going to actually want to do business with them, you'll actually need not just the feeling, which is being clairsentient, you need to actually be able to hear numbers. You need to be able to hear instructions. So, what were the instructions I was given? I know what has to happen next. I have to deal with the person that has this object, whatever, tell them what has been offered and see if they accept it. At which time they're going to say, but how do I know? What bank account do you want the money in? Now, as I'm saying these words, I myself am going, hmm. Why? Because I'm used to regular business. You don't get anything until they pay you or there's an agreement and there's a contract. So even that part is like, And there we have to go with instinctive knowing, understanding. And it's not a question, okay, we're going to trust them, go ahead and pick up whatever or do whatever you're going to do. And then the big issue is the big issue is going to be, how do you explain this to your bank? And how do you explain this to your government? And what the heck? Where do you want all of this money to be put? How do you explain it to your family? Bottom line, by the time the interaction was over, which probably took less than 3 minutes, the bottom line is, where does the money have to go? Because the exchange is going to be money. And then the person having to figure out what I had to do in retrospect, having to do with the money that I was paid, which was, believe me, nothing compared to this that I was going to say was negotiated. It wasn't negotiated. But that is the way things are in the other dimensions. You don't actually have to tell anybody anything. You a lot of times don't even have to do anything. It's just understood. And that's so much easier than the way we live on the physical dimension, where you have to fight inch by inch. You have to go to school, and you have to graduate, and you have to choose a university, and you have to have a degree, and then you have to have a website, and then you have to have your professionals and then you have to prove that you're good. You write a book, or you do a lot of studies, or you do an internship. None of that. None of that. Okay, I think that I have finished, so I'm going to look at my notes a second. A couple of messages to Trump. One of my followers had a dream in which he saw you exhausted, pasty face, exhausted. And then you took a nap in a hammock. And when you got up, you looked like you were revived. Your face had color. I don't know how many of you know I sleep in a hammock every night. Hammocks have a gentle movement that is incredible for your mind streams, your cannabinoid receptors, which are what create reality. It is an interesting turn of events, the reason why I sleep in a hammock, but I have taken naps in hammocks for a couple of decades, outside under a tree. In this case, it's not outside. So Trump, do the hammock thing. Number two, years ago, I was friends with J. Benitez, who sold millions of books having to do with aliens. Cute story about him. The night that I met him, he talks a lot about Jesus and remote viewers and going back in time and spaceships and the whole nine. He's from Spain. So the night that I met him, I was I was in the process of recuperating memories having to do with being a mind control victim, whatever. And we're sitting there in a party outdoors, and he's talking to me and asking me questions because he's a reporter also. And he kept saying, my boss, my boss, my boss. He would talk about something and say, no, because my boss. And I, at that point, was very much wrestling with the fact that I had an aspect of me that was military. I was trained by military mind control victim, whatever. So I finally said to him, who's your boss? I thought, this is interesting because we're not really supposed to ever say who our bosses are. And he said, looked at me and he said, Jesus Christ. And I laughed myself off my chair, because from the world that I was in therapy to recuperate from, just sitting there with somebody whose boss was Jesus Christ, it didn't compute. It was very funny. But anyway, the point is, we met several times. He would come to Miami. We would have dinner at my home because he didn't want other people around, because he wanted to interrogate me. In retrospect, I'm a little bit silly. So one of the visits, I had to deliver something to his hotel the next day that he was going to give to somebody. He was going to recommend me to his editor, and I had to give him a copy of my book proposal. So when I got to the hotel to deliver it, the guy at the desk said, "Oh, he left you a note." Okay, fine. And in the note, he said, because I was going that day to visit the dolphins in the Miami Seaquarium. And he said to me in the note, "Do me a favor. Would you ask him if there's more than one God?" And he's Spanish from Spain. They're very Catholic. And I was like, wow. I did ask him, and yeah, there's more than one God. That was 30 years ago. Did you know that there is a frequency that's for God, for this zip code, for this planet? 963, I believe it is. I already have some Mantrista music made up. But when I was looking it up, my guides told me the frequency for the galactic God, not the planetary God, which would be the frequency of Jesus and of the God that we've been taught, whatever, is 1120 frequency, hertz. Very, very interesting. Look them both up. Now, to get from where we're at to the 1120, you need the frequency of Kundalini, which is the frequency of sex, which is 572 hertz. So we're putting out a Mantrista music video with those three frequencies. And what's interesting is, which is the reason why I'm saying this story, the frequency 1120 hertz, when I listened to it the first time, I could see that a part of me was going out. We have a portal here, which is the portal that they start to bother me, and I have to use my Kleenex. I could see a part of me was going out. Now, 1120 is the galactic God. So that frequency, if you hear it, which is not pleasant, which is why we mix it in with some melodies, well, that should be ready by, I'll have it Monday, but the video will be ready by the end of the week. That frequency opens you up to the galactic. So if you want to do business with aliens, and again, this is the angle that I'm using to teach you what it is that I know having to do with aliens. So if you want to prepare yourself, then you should get that frequency 1120 hertz, or you can get, it's free, this video that we are putting out by the end of next week. And you should have it on a lot, because that will open this up. Now, here's the trick. If your frequency is very low because you haven't done purification of your assemblage of bodies, which is not talk therapy. Talk therapy, you talk on the physical dimension. If you are allowed to cry a lot, that is part of purification, but they generally don't let you cry a lot. They tell you, you don't need to do that. Let's just talk about it. If you're purified, then leaving through this Rudra portal, you will go to the frequencies that you are. If you're carrying a lot of garbage resentments against your mother, your father, the fact that you're an immigrant, they took your money, somebody beat you, whatever, your frequency is going to be low. So yeah, you can leave from here, but it's like going, what floor, what dimension are you going to end up at? So I'm not sure that frequency is going to be good for everybody. I don't know, but you're going to be there anyway because of this, because of revelations. All the veils are up, and our connection with the galactic, we're no longer protected like little kids. This planet has been protected. It's all going to land on us anyway. So you know what? Use a frequency. And then somebody is asking whether aliens use gold as a form of payment. In terms of the negotiations that I'm involved in, it's going to be actual dollars. I'm sure that look how interesting. I don't have a client. I have a person that I have been dealing with where these issues have been discussed. But things happen in 2 seconds in the other dimensions. And with aliens, things happen in 2 seconds. So, is there a deal? There's no deal. Is there an offer that will probably be accepted? Yeah. How do I feel about this? To a certain extent, I'm in a state of shock. The only reason I'm not more in shock is because yesterday I was able to decipher the whole issue of sex, orgasm, kundalini, reaching God issues for human beings, which to me is so much more important than money or business. So I leave you with that. And I was supposed to give you a chat on portals, but this seemed to be so much more fun today. Okay? And the portal issue is in trial right now with Elon and Sam Altman. And artificial intelligence. So we're in very exciting times. So fasten your seatbelts. Okay? Thank you. I'm Frances Fox, and I hope to be your favorite psychic spy. Bye. I forgot. I knew I was going to forget something important. Guess who showed up the night before? A representative from the Vatican, trying to interfere with me, and showed up again last night trying to interfere with me. And I have said to my followers from Venezuela that the Vatican is showing up in Venezuela without their Vatican garb, their clothing, as businessmen and businesswomen to try to get to the front of the line to negotiate with aliens. Because apparently a lot of that is going on already. And I found it interesting that someone from the Vatican showed up 2 nights ago. And then again, once I got the formal visit last night with the offer, that person was again trying to be involved. Why am I saying this? Because I think it's important to properly identify the players in this stage that we're going in. And just because somebody uses Jesus Christ as a marketing tool and the habit of tradition as a cloak, the fact that they have that habit needs to end now. It's Revelations. It's ending already. But I needed to share that. Okay? Goodbye again.